The following program contains discussion of EN server story content, which will contain some spoilers. Viewer discretion is advised. You know those fun little awards they put in yearbooks? Like Best Smile, Class Clown, Most Likely to X, Y, or Z? Well, I was wondering, what if NRC had those too? Who amongst the main cast would reign supreme for these 10 random awards? I've thought long and hard about this, and I think that if these rewards existed in universe, we would have more than a few folks skewing the votes through various, potentially nefarious means. So, in the interest of fairness, I have personally selected 3 candidates for each award, and will be choosing one winner from that group to take home the gold. Now let's see who our first trio is and what award they're competing for. For most likely to brighten up your day, I think our contenders would be Silver, Cater, and Kaleem. Silver is a gentle-natured softie whose aura brings peace to all sorts of critters, big and small. He often tries to understand others' perspectives and gives folks the benefit of the doubt, even in serious life-altering situations. So I think he's one of the most emotionally mature characters in the main cast. Because of this, I think he'd be likely to see your rain cloud right away and would do his best to shoo it away. He may not use grand gestures and may just opt to talk through things with you, but I envision he'd be pretty good at getting your worries to melt away. I think his calm demeanor would be an asset here. Since Silver is basically a judgment-free zone, I think most folks would have no trouble talking with him about their worries. But I do think that this aura may not be as impactful as the bright and cheery ones of our other contenders. Cater's sunny personality and overall attitude would break through those storm clouds with ease. In Cater's Labware vignette story, we get to see that the guy has more depth than his persona suggests, so I think he's someone who understands what it's like to be in a less than favorable mood. However, he has all sorts of tricks up his sleeve for making the most out of those situations, so I imagine he'd be great at helping others turn their frowns upside down. He's also someone who I think would take a more subtle approach to helping someone out, like tossing a small pick-me-up gift your way with the excuse that it was trending on Magicam but now isn't, so he doesn't need it anymore. Oh hey, I got this latte because I thought the art was cute for a picture, but I don't want to drink it, so how about you enjoy it? Something along those lines. I also think Cater would be one to listen to a friend's woes with an open mind and heart too. So if that was what you needed, I think Cater would be more than happy to oblige. If he can't solve your problems, maybe someone from the pop music club could. Like, say, Kaleem. I think Kaleem's aura just exudes a level of sunshine and rainbows that is paramount to none. I don't think you could be in the same room as him and still be sad. I mean, this is the guy that got Leona to ride on a carousel. So I don't think there's any way that your sadness would stand a chance. I do think that Kaleem has the potential to get a bit overzealous, as he isn't the best at reading the room. Oh, you're sad? Well, how about a parade? What? You're feeling down? Well, we must have a feast. I think that Kaleem would offer very grand gestures to try to cheer you up, which may or may not be warranted given the situation. I mean, who doesn't love a feast, right? But I think the evil eye Jamil would be giving you might not make it worth it. Kaleem's heart is in the right place though, and I suppose he could get talked down from extravagance easily enough by the right people. But I think you would have to be prepared for the possibility of some grandeur happening once in a while. Overall, Kaleem is just a bit extra. But because he goes above and beyond, I think I would have to hand this award over to him. So congratulations to Kaleem for being the most likely to brighten up your day. Next up, we have most likely to be Magicam famous. For this award, our contenders are Vil, Cater, and Ortho. Now, Vil seems like he has an unfair advantage, and that's because he does. But I don't think this category could exclude him because of his fame. If anything, I think it makes him way more likely to win the popular vote. Vil is a celebrity, so having social media is basically a given. However, However, because of his image, Vil is extremely judicious on what he allows to be posted online and is extra critical of what he himself posts to his own socials. I'm honestly surprised that he let Jade slip in that promotional image so easily in Jade's dorm uniform vignette story. But that whole situation was also a bit unique, and outside of it, on the whole, Vil is very conscious of what he posts. He's not one to follow trends, he's one to start them. So he has to be mindful of what he posts and when to not only grow his popularity, but beat out his competition. This is Vil's weakness and where I could see him getting usurped from this throne. Throughout Book 5, we can see him checking Magicam through Mira, which is such a clever Siri disguise. I am so delighted by this reference. But he's constantly checking on Nige and where Nige is at and how many likes and followers Nige has, and my lord, is that a lot of effort. Being so focused on someone else can impact your own success, so maybe, just maybe, one of our other contenders has a shot. Cater's whole persona revolves around Magicam, like this guy is codependent. The way he talks includes tech slang, and he's always on top of the latest trends. He may be a bit late to some things, but he's just trying his best to make it in the influencer world. So far, he seems to be succeeding, as he has a decent number of followers and great consistency with his posting. He's almost a little too pushy with it, though, as his entire focus seems to be on this app, to the point where Riddle had to create an account to be able to get Cater to study. Like, this guy's a little too obsessed. I don't know if Cater has any goals outside of becoming Magicam famous, since so much of his personality, at least from what I've seen, revolves around it. There are instances where this is a huge help, like in one of the dorm vignette stories where we see Cater's photo snapping storm save Hearts level students from losing their heads over silverware placement. That said though, this constant snapping does mean that there's probably a good chunk of Cater's posts that are just there as filler, so even though his mind is always on Magicam, he may not be super mindful about what he's posting, which could affect his fame. Now, I've included Ortho for a variety of reasons. Firstly, I think he's adorable, and his unique fashion could go very viral in the right niches. Secondly, he would be able to analyze trends extremely well, given his data focus, so he would know what to post and when to best capitalize on things. And thirdly, I could see him wanting to start an account to get a better understanding of people and perhaps even interact more with folks. He joined the film research club to get a better understanding of people and their emotions, so I could see Magicam being another research avenue for him. I don't think Ortho has any desire to be famous, at least not in the same way as Cater or Vil, but I do think he might find it fun. There would be some restrictions to his posting though, since Styx is a top secret organization, and he presumably spends a lot of time there outside of school. So there is a lot of content that Ortho would have to stay away from or be cognizant of. I think it'd be a huge breach of security protocol for Ortho to take selfies with the shades or to share pics of the researchers, so he might be a little bit more limited in keeping his account up to date, which could impact his potential fame. So who takes home this crown? Well, I think Ortho has the strongest chance at beating Vil. I don't think he'd actually want to or would be interested in that goal, so I think Vil can safely take home this silly award. Congratulations to Vil for being the most likely to be Magicam famous. Our third award is Best Shoulder to Cry On. For this award we have Silver, Trey, and Lilia. Silver is back once again for some of the same qualities I mentioned before. He's calm, level-headed, and can entertain more than just his own perspective. I can see him being a wonderful friend and fellow who would be willing to hear you out and help you in whatever way he can. Silver would also be one to call you out on your BS though, but he would likely do this nicely, so he's not just going to sit there and shake his head yes and just coddle you. I think this is a very important quality to have in someone who you are confiding in, as it's good to get the truth no matter how much it may hurt. And I think with Silver, it wouldn't hurt that badly. The only problem you might come across when you're spilling your heart out is that Silver may or may not be able to keep himself awake for the conversation. It's not really his fault, but depending on who you are, this could be rather frustrating. Especially if you got to the most serious part of your feelings only to look over and find Silver comatose. Outside of that, though, I don't see a downside to him in this regard, so he's a strong contender for sure. Trey, on the other hand, wouldn't fall asleep on you, but I also don't think he'd be willing to give you any strong opinions. Trey is another gentle soul who would be more than willing to hear you out and maybe, just maybe, give you a little treat to soothe your concerns. He's got that big brother energy and it's well deserved. Not only is he an actual big brother to his actual siblings, but he also cares for his dorm mates in the same way. He makes sure they brush their teeth and tries to keep everyone out of trouble as best he can, but he's also not a complete pushover either, as we see in his dorm uniform vignette. I think if you were to cry on Trey's shoulder, literally or figuratively, he would be another good source of calm. His advice and input would be well-tempered, should you need it, but I think he's much more likely to just let you air everything out than slide a cookie or cake slice your way to mend your heart. Vill's labware vignette is an excellent example of how I think venting to Trey might be, and it worked out great for Vill, so I can't imagine it not working for you. Lilia is also on this list, and for good reason. He has been through it, and yet, despite everything, he has remained a positive inspiration for the Diasomnia boys and keeps his chin up in almost every situation. Despite his initial misgivings about being a father, Lilia has done an excellent job raising Silver into the fantastic person that he is today. And Lilia has also had a great impact on Malleus's growth too. We see him often counseling all three of the boys in various story beats, and while things aren't always perfect, they are usually quite good. I think if you were to seek out Lilia to vent to, he would listen with open ears and an open mind, and he would eventually give you solid advice. But you'd probably have to endure some teasing along the way too. I doubt that in a super serious venting session he'd opt to tease, but if you're just complaining about classes or professors or stuff like that without any serious undertones, I betcha there will be some whimsy. I think this makes him a bit more fun than our other contenders, but I don't think it would make him any less viable for the category. Unless you take any of his cooking advice into consideration, which, yeah, okay, with that in mind, he may not be the best shoulder to cry on, but I think his fatherly aura and general knowledge of life would make him an excellent resource in this regard. At the end of the day, I think Silver would win the category because he's the best of both our other contenders. He's calm and understanding, but would also give out good advice and let you know when you're in the wrong, without messing up any of your recipes. So, Silver will be crowned best shoulder to cry on. Congratulations to Silver. Now, when I was looking at the lists of superlatives for this video, I saw Biggest Flirt come up a couple of times, and each time I did, I had a very clear vision of our NRC lineup. In fact, it was so clear that I had to include this category even though the kiddos are still a bit young. If high schools include it, then NRC probably also would. So for this award, we have Rook, Rook, and Rook. There is no contest. There is just Rook. You cannot convince me that there is anyone else in the main cast that would come close to the level of Riz that Rook possesses. Okay, I guess Cater is a close second. I can concede that. But to me, he's got nothing on Rook. Did you not see how smoothly he saved Mage from certain doom in Book 5? To so casually insert yourself into the tension between Vil and Mage, to have known exactly what to say to obtain the cursed drink, and then to have enough situational awareness to not lash out at Vil for nearly ending the person you've dedicated most of your life to? And you want to tell me that this guy wouldn't be smooth in a romantic setting? There is no way that Rook fails to flirt in any context, and he's got a couple other things going for him too. He looks at the world through rose-tinted glasses and sees the beauty in everything and everyone. If he's looking at someone as a potential partner, then there's no way that they are anything less than a god or goddess in his eyes, which means the compliments and flirting they are going to receive is going to be top tier. He's got enough awareness about him to know just how much he can push and pull, what words to say, when to appear, and how to approach people. And he compliments pretty much everyone about pretty much everything, and I don't think there's a way to stop his flow of compliments or flirtations once he starts. There are times where he does pop up unexpectedly or is watching intently from a distance, which can be unnerving for sure. But how could you say no to a guy who's going to worship every aspect of you while also giving you compliments in French? It is a romance language for a reason, is it not? And it's not at all because its roots are in Latin, it's all because of the charisma it gives off, which fits Rook so well. He's basically already flirting with everyone anyways, with all of the compliments he's showering everyone he meets with, so who would not vote for him to be the biggest flirt? So congratulations, Rook, it was no contest, you have won biggest flirt. With that, it's on to number 5. We have most likely to stay in their hometown. Now, there are many folks that I can see this award going to. Some are a little more off the cuff than others, but I think there are reasons that Deuce, Apple, and Jade fit particularly well here. Deuce is a sweetie who I think has grown more attached to his hometown over time. During White Rabbit Fest, we got to see a lot more of his past and present selves, which leads me to suspect that Deuce might want to stay in Clocktown. We know that Deuce wants to become an officer so he can help out struggling kids like himself, as one of his biggest influences growing up was an officer who helped him. We also know that Clocktown to this day has a lot of hooligans running around and various petty gangs that Deuce might want to influence in some way. He's also got the street cred back home to help him genuinely relate to such kiddos, so I can see him wanting to give back to his community as an adult. It also helps that his hometown is kind of a hot spot for blast cycle customization, since that is one of his hobbies. He also loves his mom a lot, and since he's an only child, I think it's likely that he'd want to take good care of her as she gets older, and might end up staying in his hometown to do so, if nothing else. But his interest in Clocktown isn't super intense, since he has to read a guidebook to us at the beginning of the event since he never really paid attention to its history before. And while Deuce may lack passion, Apple sure doesn't. Harveston is Apple's bread and butter, and he has no desire to live anywhere else that I am aware of, at least. During the sled-a-thon, he's genuinely excited to show everyone his hometown, even though most of the people he brought with him aren't close friends. He is extremely passionate about not just the apples, but the people and the customs there as well. We get our iconic wishing well scene and hand-washing scenes at his insistence. And whenever Vil isn't around, Apple lets his country roots out. Part of his dream is to work towards understanding and improving Harveston's agricultural landscape with science and magic to really put it on the map. This desire is helping him reconcile with his dorm placement since potionality does have uses for fertilizing production, and learning how to care for a variety of plants for potions can also help his efforts. It does seem like Apple is influenced by his family as well, since we can see some of Marja's tendencies reflected in Apple. She's passionate about her home too, and is wickedly competitive. These qualities seem to have influenced or carried over to Apple, as we often see this competitive streak come through in other story-related situations. Given that Marja is passionate about the town, it makes sense that Apple would be too, as I'm sure the rest of his family is also like this. Apple wants to revitalize the town, but in his own way with his own twist. Which might be an upward battle, but given his clear focus, I don't think he'll be abandoning Harveston anytime soon. However, there is one other contender that I threw in here that we should chat about before reaching any conclusions. Jade may seem like an odd choice, given how little he and Floyd seem to talk about their home outside of their birthday cards, but I think he'd be a logical contender if my assumptions about their family are true. For the longest time, I had assumed, given the luxury goods the twins get from home on their birthday, that their family must be mafia or mafia adjacent. If that is true, then Jade and Floyd basically have their future laid out for them since they are likely already involved in the business to some extent. But their family could also just run a very successful normal business, like an advertising firm, which would get them enough money and high-profile clients for these gifts. Either way, The fact that Jade and Floyd basically do everything just for the thrill of it gives off a bit of trust fund vibes, legally obtained or not. But because of this, I think Jade would be the likely candidate of the two to take over any potential family business. If he's going to be leading the underwater conglomerate, he'd likely have to stay at home and would therefore be staying in his hometown. Perhaps he'd have enough power to relocate the headquarters somewhere else, but I think it's very likely that this business would remain right where it's at. I do think that Jade would likely have a vacation home tucked away in the mountains that he would visit from time to time, but I think the mysterious family business and its potential succession do make Jade a contender for this award. However, compared to Apple, there really isn't much room for the competition. Deuce and Jade may have their reasons for staying at home, but neither can match the passion that Apple has for Harveston. So congratulations to Apple for winning the most likely to stay in their hometown award. So instead of going with the most likely to succeed, I thought it would be a little bit more thematic to go with the most magical mage. So for this category, we have Leona, Riddle, and Malleus. Leona may appear to be a lazy lion, and in many ways he is, but despite that flaw, he's exceptionally gifted at magic. It takes him only a matter of minutes to whip up a potion that took Epple and Grim a whole day to get right. Even though the only reason he made it was to get Rook off his back, he still made it in record time, and that's a feat of magical might for sure. And he swapped from his school uniform to his lab uniform in no time at all, meaning he likely used magic for that too, which went unnoticed by all three bystanders. His prowess doesn't stop at potions either, since he's the leader of the Spell Drive Club and Savannah Claw's Spell Drive team. He could only get these positions if he was well versed in magic, given that the entire sport is dependent upon it. We also get to see his magical skills in his dorm uniform vignette, and we get a huge practical example in Book 2. When confronted by Riddle and Co. about his underhanded dealings, Leona is able to easily deflect Riddle's special magic. Leona is extremely smart and knows when to make his moves, even if his intentions are less than pure, and he's able to use his magic in exceptional ways, partially because of that. Even when he's overblotting, he's still in a way exercising restraint, as he could have Thanos snapped Ruggy immediately, but he doesn't. With all of these factors to consider, I think Leona could very easily win this, but even though he was able to deflect Riddle's magic, Riddle still has his own advantages. Riddle's entire life has been dedicated to studying and becoming the best mage, at least on paper. Even though he's only a year above the freshmen, he's able to smoke them during their battle to dethrone him. While Riddle seems to rely on his special magic for conflict resolution, it's not his only skill. Riddle gets top marks in all his classes, including PE, though he's not the most physically fit. He's a whiz at flight magic, thanks to little help from Vargas, which means that he's able to learn and adapt his magic to work in a variety of situations. He may be a bit sheltered, but he's by no means a slacker, and he puts his all into his magic. He may not be as quick as Leona at certain things, but the things he can do, he does very well. The quality of his work makes him a good contender for this category, even if his magic isn't as strong as, say, Malleus's. Malleus is a Fae-born prince, so he's got an advantage in this category right off the bat. With almost 200 years of magical practice, complete with private tutors, he is a force to be reckoned with. Malleus is ranked as one of the top 5 mages in all of Twisted Wonderland, and that's saying something given his relatively young age. We see him teleport all the time, a process which involves deconstructing and reconstructing every part of your being, which sounds extremely complicated, at least to me. He also gives Lilia a suit via conjuration, which impresses Colleen, but also requires a very clear vision to be executed properly. He is able to freeze time over the entire campus during the Spectral Soiree, and at the end of Book 6, Malleus repairs the entirety of the SDC stage with a few minor words. In Book 7, he, puts the entirety of Sage's Island to sleep with his special magic, and is expanding it over the rest of the world to try to put everyone everywhere to sleep. Such feats are almost incomprehensible, and the last one does result in an overplot, but these things do make sense for someone of Malleus's lineage and background. It's so wildly impressive, though, that I have difficulty wrapping my head around his abilities sometimes. So at the end of the day, I think the battle really comes down to Leona versus Malleus, a tale as old as time. But if I had to pick one of the two, I'd end up picking Malleus here. He just had more time and more experience with magic, and his magic reserves are near bottomless. So Mal wins the Most Magical Mage award. Congratulations! Now, this award, most likely to win the lottery only to then lose the ticket, gave me quite a laugh when I first saw it, and I think there are a few folks who would fit the bill well. We have Leona, Deuce, and Floyd. Leona tosses his wallet to Ruggy on occasion, and we see that in Book 3, his possessions are not super well taken care of in his room. In fact, there seems to be very few material things that Leona actually cares about. Sure, he's very interested in one of his necklaces during Ruggy's dorm uniform vignette, and he's not just leaving his wallet around for anyone to pick up, but I feel like if he ever did get a lottery ticket, he probably would forget about it before the numbers got called. Partially because it'd likely end up in a pile of things somewhere in his room and get picked up by Ruggy, and partially because I don't think he'd ever actually buy a ticket for himself since he isn't hurting financially. But in this scenario, I just see his ticket either getting lost or conveniently getting misplaced by a certain other someone who would be more than happy to take those winnings. Deuce, for his part, is a bit more responsible and would probably take care of the ticket, but I think a series of unfortunate events might lead to him losing it. It seems like all of our freshman friends encounter misfortune in some form or another rather frequently, and I could see this being a case of Ace teasing Deuce for buying a ticket, the two arguing a little, and perhaps during that process the ticket gets left in the common room and cleaned up by someone else. Or Deuce would then learn that it was a winning ticket, only to then not be able to find it in his room or the common space. In this scenario, I don't think anyone would have picked it up with intentions to keep it, like a certain other someone, but I do think that the ticket would actually be lost, unfortunately. Floyd, on the other hand, would pick up the lottery ticket for the lulz. Probably find out that it's a winner, think that that's kind of lame, then get bored and throw it out. He could also be ecstatic about winning and grab the money. I don't really know, his moods are a little wishy-washy. But I do think that he would find it infinitely more entertaining to offhandedly mention throwing it out to Azul to watch Azul's reaction. But who can really say for sure what he would do? Floyd also isn't someone hurting for money, so I don't think he would be motivated to buy the ticket for that purpose. And given the way he keeps his side of the room, I think it's also very likely that it could just get lost in the chaos of whatever's going on over there. I think out of these three, though, Leona would be the winner, since he's not only has himself, but Ruggy to blame should the ticket disappear. So congratulations to Leona and by extension Ruggy for being the most likely to win the lottery ticket only to then lose it. I saw this award pop up on multiple lists as well, and there are a few characters in Twisted Wonderland who do own or are in line to own their own businesses. So I think that Trey, Azul, and Iria are very well equipped to win this award. Trey is the son of bakers in the Queendom of Roses and is the eldest of his siblings, so it's likely that he would be the prime choice to take over the family business. He's very good at baking and enjoys experimenting with different ingredients. He joined the science club partially as a way to better understand food and to grow his own varieties of fruits like strawberries. So he is invested in at least making sure the goods he produces are quality. I think it'd be very likely for Trey to take over the family business or go off and start his own bakery elsewhere. He's got the knowledge and the skills to do it well, so it could be a very successful venture for him. Azul, on the other hand, is already running his own business and is doing so very, very well. The Mastro Lounge brings in a whole host of students from various dorms and seems to run like a well-oiled machine. This little restaurant is his pride and joy, though he's loath to admit it, and he takes very good care of it. Now, he is profit-driven, even going so far as to enslave students as workers to cut down on operation costs, in addition to his other goals, so he is the spitting image of a businessman. On a slightly more positive note, he is always looking for new ways to improve the lounge and continues to analyze all sorts of data in addition to doing his school responsibilities. During Book 3, we can see him trying to expand his business with his goal of opening up a second branch at the Ramshackle dorm. Even though he isn't able to accomplish this, it bodes well for his future endeavors that he's already thinking ahead. He does have the help of Jade and Floyd, but I think even independently, given his strong motivation, Azul could make any business thrive. Even his Soom has impeccable business sense, so in this regard, Azul is a very strong contender. Idia is much less upfront about his work, and with good reason, since Idia will, presumably, eventually take over Styx, the super secret organization that we learn about in Book 6. At least prior to that book's events, Idia was the sole contender for the director role, even taking on an acting director role during that story. But now that Ortho is truly alive, the successor to Styx may be up for debate. I do think it's likely that Idia will take over the job, but I also think that Ortho might take it up so that Idia can pursue other avenues, like working for Olympus Tech. Even if he doesn't become the full-time director of Styx, I can see Idia owning and selling a ton of tech startups and making his bag that way. In that vein, I guess Idia would be able to then own several businesses, and he could probably start these tech gigs while still working at Styx, so he's got a lot going for him there. The real kicker is whether or not he'd want to do any of these things, as I think his personal motivations might be his weakness in this contest. So between the three, I think the person with the strongest desire, best laid out plan, and greatest overall entrepreneurial spirit is Azul. He won this contest fair and square, so congratulations to Azul for being the most likely to own his own business. Our next award was inspired by a note I got on a report card once in elementary school. If I had to guess who out of all of the NRC students would take home most likely to always fulfill their civic duties, I'd figure it'd have to be either Deuce, Jack, or Riddle. Deuce is trying so hard to be a good boy. When he was younger, he absolutely would not be considered for this award. However, as we know him today, I think he's a great contender. Deuce's goal is to become an honor student to make his mom proud, and to be an honor student, you have to follow the rules. While he does falter occasionally in this pursuit, like we see in the prologue scuffle and Book 1, he is trying really, really hard to become a law-abiding citizen. We find out in Deuce's star-sending robe vignette story that he'd love to become a police officer or even a special agent. However, both positions require not only good grades, but good sense. We can see him slowly developing his conscience over the course of the main story, and while that doesn't necessarily mean he'd be fulfilling all of his civic duties, I do think it makes him much more likely to do so compared to some of the other folks in the main cast. His growing sensibilities aren't quite reliable, though, as he does invite Riddle to skip school in Playful Land despite knowing that skipping school is breaking the rules. He wants to include Riddle or his boss because he figured it'd be unfair if he didn't, but doing so does insinuate violating the rules, which doesn't go over very well. Deuce still has a way to go before he's ready to be a true friend of the law, but his efforts are not in vain, and I think he's still a good candidate for this award. Another goody two-shoes, at least in a way, is Jack. This guy has very strong morals that he stands by in almost every situation. Sure, he was willing to look the other way to Leona's plot, but that was only until his moral code got the better of him. His personal rule set also comes into play during Book 3 and offers a much-needed counterbalance to the chaos of Grim, Ace, and Deuce. His concern for folks is genuine, and he seems to have a good head on his shoulders overall, giving proper weight to situations that require them. He also takes responsibility for his own shortcomings, like in his labware vignette, where he takes over for Jade at the lounge to make up for trashing Jade's mushroom log. Jack isn't going to take the easy way out, and he's going to stick by his principles, making him another great contender for this award. Now, Riddle's entire character is based on the idea of being a model citizen, just taken to the extreme. This guy will follow the rules until his dying breath, to the detriment of those around him and himself. Book 1 shows this in spades, but also shows his journey of realizing and accepting that life needs balance between law and chaos. Post Book 1, he's still very strict with rules, as his whole concept of love and care comes from such strictness, but he's no longer the reactive dictator he once was. However, as far as academics and school goes, he is a goody two-shoes tattletale, which I think in the context of this award makes him the most viable to win. He follows all of the rules, does all of the assignments to the highest caliber, and still has time to make sure his charges aren't flunking out of school. He's able to manage personal and professional responsibilities well, all while adhering to societal and personal laws. Between the three, I think Riddle gets this one on principle. Riddle just reminds me a little bit of how I used to be when I was younger, and since that was the inspiration for this award, I cannot help but name him most likely to always fulfill their civic duties. So congratulations to Riddle. Now, during the story, we do have many folks who try to take over at least part of the world. So I figured, why not include most likely to take over the world quietly as an award category? For this one, we've got Jade, Jamil, and Ortho. It's usually the quiet folks that you gotta watch out for, and no one fits this bill better than Jade. He is so subtly menacing that you may very well give over all of your secrets to him without even realizing that's what you're doing. By the time you do, though, it's too late, and you're already beholden to his whims. I think that if his family business is something more nefarious, then Jade would already be starting out with an abundance of connections to make taking over the world easy. He would do so from the shadows as well, since that's his entire MO. He's quite happy that Floyd takes the spotlight away from him, since this allows him to get more work done on his own. Work that no one really questions because he's just so polite and well-meaning when you chat with him. Once you've seen his darker side, though, it's usually too late for you, so you have no choice but to follow along. Or so it would appear anyways, giving Jade a truly unique position from which to take over the world quietly. Jamil, for his part, did try to take over Scarabia, and did so using similarly shady means, keeping everyone in the dark about his magical dealings. As we've previously discussed, Jamil is quite knowledgeable and extremely capable, so there's no way he wouldn't be able to come up with a plan to take over the world. His plan to take over Scarabia nearly worked, and if the MC wasn't there, it probably would have too. Given his track record and the methods used for that coup, I think Jamil could succeed in a similar manner on a grander scale. He also gets to work from the shadows since he can't outshine Kaleem, so it stands to reason that he could get away with a bit more scheming in the dark. He's got the brains and the opportunity, so why not? Similar is Ortho's case. However, Ortho's world takeover was only quiet due to the secrecy of Styx, but unfortunately for Ortho, such a takeover would have become very loud very quickly once the rest of the world got involved. There is no way you're releasing Titans without folks knowing. That just can't happen. But since that debacle was sorted, I can see Ortho taking a much more subtle approach to some type of world takeover in the future. However, I think that if he was going to do something dramatic, he probably would do so with a bit more flair. He's got the whole of the internet at his fingertips, and he's able to thwart even the brightest minds at Styx when it comes to hacking, so I doubt it would take very much effort at all for Ortho to, say, crash the world economy if he wanted to. Perhaps not that easily, since he can't really get much done if there's a jammer involved, like we see in Playful Land, but if he's got an internet connection, he's got the power to cause some real chaos. Out of these three, I'm going to award the most likely to take over the world quietly to Jade. I think he has a little bit more opportunity than Jamil and a few more contexts to get that ball rolling, so I feel he'd be best suited for the task. So congratulations to Jade. So there we have it, our NRC Yearbook winners. Do you think these awards were well deserved? Or do you think there are other folks that are better suited? Please let me know your thoughts below, as I'm quite curious as to what awards you think your favorites might have won. And as always, if you've enjoyed this video, please let me know with a like or a comment or maybe even a subscribe. And if you'd like more content like this in the future, please let me know below. Now, before you go, I'd just like to remind you that you're amazing and I hope you have a wonderful day.